Hey guys, well, we're coming to the end of our lap of Australia. Sad, I know. One of the questions that we've had probably more than any other question is how do we go taking Archie with us? So travelling around Australia with the dog. So we thought it was probably worth pulling together a bit of a video to tell you exactly how we've managed.
Yeah, exactly. As Hannah said, it's one of our most requested questions by a long, long way. And we have done an episode already about traveling with your dog, which you'll find the link up here. So feel free to go watch that after this episode as well. But this episode's going to be part 2, but probably a little bit more detailed and addressing a few specific questions that we've had on the way. So I suppose we should start with the pros and cons of taking your dog on a lap of Australia or traveling with your dog. So, I mean, the pros are they're endless, really. You've got your best friend traveling with you. It's so much fun.
Yeah.
He's a delight to have around. We love him.
Yeah, when we've had enough of each other, you can just take the dog and go out for a walk.
Yeah, exactly. And he keeps us outside. He keeps us exploring new beaches and new parks and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we just love having him around. And when we were planning this lap of Australia, it wasn't a question at all. Archie was always going to come with us. And I know a lot of you out there as well feel the same about your pets.
Yeah, and I think another pro as well is it's also when you're in some more remote areas, I think it gives you a little bit more of a feeling of safety.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Archie being a big black dog, I suppose, can be a little bit of a deterrent as well. So,
or even smaller dogs. I mean, they hear things that we don't hear, so they pick up on noises and bark to let you know. So I think that's probably a pro as well.
Yeah, and I think the pros are pretty obvious. You know, you love your pet, you want them with you. Full stop.
Yeah.
But there are a few cons that you do need to be aware of. The biggest one is national parks and, not being able to bring your dog into any national parks across Australia or being able to stay in them either does create a few issues when you want to take your dog with you. Nothing's impossible. It just takes a little bit of planning and a little bit of kind of forward thinking and a bit of research as well. But we've managed to go to every single national park that we've wanted to. And we haven't, not once on this trip, been restricted by having a dog and not going into the national park.
Okay, once. It happened once.
Yeah.
Chris still got to go, but in the bungles, we couldn't find a dog sitter, and so I had to give that one a miss.
Yeah, but in this episode, we're going to take you through some of the steps on finding a dog sitter and some tips and tricks about travelling with your dog on the lap of Australia. Pet sitting for us was the big key on being able to visit these national parks. But that is the big con, I think. Can you think of any other cons that you...
No, not really. I mean, I think just having to be aware of your dog's safety as well. It's not exactly a con, but once you do get a lot more sort of remote and probably more so like once you get sort of the Nullarbor SA and then most of WA, there is a big issue in terms of baiting.
Yeah.
So you obviously have to be really careful as to where you let your dog go, because on a lot of land there is the potential for there to be 1080 bait, which is highly poisonous to dogs.
Ticks as well has been an issue, especially in the north of the country, far north Queensland and north WA. So we've had a tick collar on Archie for probably 4 to 6 months. And that is a serious issue, especially this time of year. And, on our trip that we've done in particular this year, for some reason, it was quite prevalent as well. So we just had to be extra careful and check Archie over when we went into bushland and things like that.
Yeah, so it's not exactly a con, but more just, you do have to take the time to both plan in terms of the trips and also sort of plan and kind of, just make sure your dog's safe.
So it's really important to find accommodation which is dog friendly as you go around Australia.
There's loads of it.
Yeah, there's plenty.
There's so much.
We rely on Wikicamps, and it's really easy to find. There's a little picture of a dog, and you can set filters on that as well to find those dog friendly accommodation spots around the country.
Yeah, I suppose the one thing to note with Wikicamps is there's also a seasonal dog one. So sometimes it's easier to actually hide dogs not allowed than add with dogs allowed, because otherwise they'll disappear just fully and you might miss out on a caravan park that you could go to out of the holiday period.
Yeah, but what we generally do, we always plan ahead. I think having a dog with you on a lap of Australia, it's all about planning and planning ahead. For example, if I know that I want to go to a national park in a week's time, then I need to start looking at caravan spots around the national park and then looking at dog sitters probably about a week or so before you get there as well. So the key thing is when we find accommodation, we look at caravan spots and campgrounds around the national park where we can base ourselves to either pop in and have a look around or find a dog sitter in a nearby town. And that's really the first step when it comes to finding accommodation in around national parks.
So really, we do it all together. So that we don't get an issue where we've booked accommodation, but then there's no dog solution. We try and think of every location together. Does this accommodation allow us to have a dog-friendly solution?
Yeah, exactly. And you know, we have a little, once we found the accommodation, we have an advantage is where we can leave Archie in the caravan for a few hours at a time. And we do that because Archie's a really placid dog. He loves being in the caravan. He never, ever barks. It's very, very difficult for him to bark. Even on command, we struggle getting him to bark. And he's just a really, really chilled out dog. And I know there's a lot of dogs that aren't like Archie, and we're very lucky to have a dog like Archie. And so if we go to the supermarket, for example, we'll leave Archie in the caravan with the air conditioning on, with some water, with a treat, the fans on, and we never leave him for more than a few hours at a time in the caravan.
Yeah. That's saying the odd occasion where we both do go to the supermarket. Usually it's just muggins here.
Yeah.
but yeah, and even then when it's a few hours, we always make sure it's not too hot, because there's always the chance that someone could accidentally unplug your electricity or that there's a power cut. So we will always put the Sirocco fans on as well. And we'll make sure that the skylight blinds are closed so that the caravan isn't heating up from sunlight. And just generally that it's not too hot outside. So when we do it, we'll generally try and leave at maybe 8 o'clock in the morning, and it to be from say 8 till 11. And then once we're just very aware of
after
of
a long walk as well, we give him a nice walk in the morning so he can have a sniff, do his business,
has loads of water, fill both of his bowls up,
tire him out a little bit. But we would never leave him for more than a few hours, 3-4 max. We'd never leave him for longer than that in the caravan. As soon as we want to leave him for longer than that, then we force ourselves to look for pet sitters, or people in the caravan park maybe, or friends that we've met to look after Archie.
We've sneaked back a couple of times to see what he does when we've just like popped off, or we might have even just gone to the other side of the caravan park. And he's sneaky, so as soon as we get out, he goes straight onto the bed, generally around Chris's pillow, and likes to just chill out and enjoy the full queen-size bed to himself.
Yeah, exactly right. And you know, for example of when we've done this besides supermarket is we did it in Litchfield, because we managed to get a beautiful little spot called Banyan Tree if you're in the area. And it was literally 10-15 minutes from Litchfield National Park. So we could easily walk Archie in the morning, pop in to Litchfield for a few hours, come back, have some lunch, you know, play with Archie for a bit, walk him again, and then pop in again for the afternoon. And it was just so easy. So that was a really easy solution.
That was a great spot as well, because all of the sites were really shaded. So there were these big trees, so there actually wasn't any sunlight getting directly onto the caravan to warm it up in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's probably the first thing to think about, but we do not recommend you leave your dog in a caravan if you're not 100% sure that they will be okay, and it's happened, you've been doing it before, and they don't have separation anxiety.
Yeah.
So
And also there are some caravan parks that have really strict rules about not leaving your dog on its own in the caravan. So again, if that is the case with that particular caravan park, then you abide by the rules.
Exactly, yeah. You don't want to be kicked out of a van park or banned from a chain of parks or anything like that. So if they've got rules like that, we've obeyed them all the time. But yeah, we only ever do it because we know we can leave Archie there and he's happy. He's not stressed. He has some water. He's comfortable. He's in a friendly environment. We've been asked, how do you manage it with 2 dogs? 2 dogs, it'd be a lot more difficult, I would imagine, and you probably wouldn't be able to do that as much. But you got to use common sense. You know your dog better than everyone else, and you just got to, if you're comfortable leaving him or her there for a couple of hours, and that's okay, then do it. But don't leave them in the caravan all day, and don't do it if you're not comfortable about it.
Yeah. So I suppose that comes on to the next bit, which is if you're not comfortable. So if you do have 2 dogs, that's not to say that you can't travel with them. You just have to go on to other alternatives, that being actually getting another human to look after your dog.
Yeah. So we've done so much pet sitting on the way. We've probably spent
$5,000.
Oh no, not that much. But
I
probably,
don't know. We've spent a fair bit.
We've
a
spent
few
a lot.
thousand, I reckon.
Yeah, on pet sitting, and we always have to be planned about pet sitting and make sure we know what pet sitters, what areas we need pet sitters, how many days for, and where they're located before we get to a location. But we've I reckon we have narrowed down the ideal way of searching for a pet sitter, I reckon. After trial and error, we've kind of found the most successful routes and options, and we go there first, and then Hannah will take you through the step-by-step process on our guide to finding a good pet sitter in the area.
Yeah, so depending on the method, also depends on the price. So I think the cheapest pet sitter that we've had was about maybe $22 for a day, and the most expensive was $100 for a day.
Yes, we paid $100 for the day once.
Yeah, absolutely shocking.
Yeah.
So it really varies widely in price. So ideally, in a lot of places where there are a couple of options, you can almost shop around, make sure it's a person that you feel comfortable with. I suppose the challenge is, versus finding a dog sitter in your hometown, you can't do the whole meet and greet if you're only staying a couple of days and you're booking it ahead. So
we've done it a couple of times, but most of the time it's just a friendly drop off, and we'll pick him up later.
Yeah, so as a result, there's a bit more of a conversation that happens beforehand, letting them know about what your dog's personality is like, whether it's good with other dogs, getting an idea from the sitter what their experience at looking after dogs is. Do they have another dog or any other animals? Archie doesn't like cats, so ideally it's not a cat household, or they can put the cat somewhere else. But I suppose, they're the sort of considerations you have to think about.
And I think the average price for a pet sitter, like $22, is pretty unbelievable. That's really cheap. I would say the average is probably around $35 to $40 a day, probably $35 a day.
Yeah.
You find some really crazy prices out there, and it really depends on the location. We've paid more for pet sitters because there's just no one else around there. But in the cities where we've needed a pet sitter, it's been absolutely cheap because there's so many people willing to look after. But, I'd look around the $35 mark, $40 mark, but expect to pay more in more remote areas.
Yeah. So I suppose talking about that process, there is the difference between city versus countryside. So in terms of the city, our first stop is Mad Paws. So that's an app, or I think it's also a website, and you can just look in the suburbs. So we've used Mad Paws in places like Perth, Cairns, Townsville, Darwin. So it's been very much around the cities because that's where there are actually people that have signed up with Mad Paws in terms of being dog sitters.
So download that app, Mad Paws. It's a bit finicky, but it's a good app, and you find some really amazing pet sitters on there.
Yeah, and I think Mad Paws as a company also has some checks that they do on the dog sitters, and I think there's some kind of insurance that's attached to it as well.
Yeah,
So,
and you don't pay for the dog sitter until you receive your dog back, so then you release the money for them, so it's completely safe. We've used it 24 times, I reckon, and we love it.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's been a really good app. So that's what we do sort of city-wise, where there are people on Mad Paws. If not, we have a bit of a different process. So firstly, when we call up to book the caravan park, if we're calling about the accommodation, we'll also ask the caravan park about dog sitters. Chances are they've already had plenty of people come through the doors that have dogs, and so are most likely to have a view as to dog sitters in the area.
Yeah, most of the time when we ask a caravan park on recommendations for a pet sitter, our problems are solved right then and there. We don't need to go to step 2, do not pass go. We've done. We've got what we need. So first things first, call the caravan park and double check if they know of any pet sitters in the area. That is most of the time solves the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's great that way as well is they are generally very close to the caravan park, because that's where the dog sitters have approached them, given them the business cards and so on. The second step, if you don't have any luck there, or you might not be staying at a caravan park, you might be staying at a campground or free camping or whatever. So the second step is go to the local visitor centre, or phone up, assuming you haven't got there yet, you're phoning up the local visitor centre, because they often have a local contacts list, so they can look up, and they might say, oh, we don't know of any dog sitters, but here are some vets' contact details. You could call the vets to find out, but they'll usually give you a solution to help you on your way.
Yeah, and some vets in some areas do animal sitting as well. So we actually haven't used any vets, but we certainly have been given some vet details that do pet sitting. There's not too many, but that's definitely worth a check.
Yeah, absolutely. After that, we would generally go onto Facebook. So you can, Facebook or Google. We generally go online. It sort of all happens at once. So you Google town dog sitting, or put in Facebook town and dog sitting, and between one or the other, that will often come up with some options as well. I suppose the downside of doing it this way is it's a little bit potluck, because you're obviously not getting a recommendation from the caravan park, or a recommendation from the visitor centre, or a recommendation from the vet.
Yeah.
So
I mean, usually on the Facebook side of things, you're looking for like a community page or a dog sitting page, for example. Tom Price, there's no dog sitters around there that we found on either Mad Paws. Our caravan park didn't know of any either. So the next step was this Tom Price community page, wasn't it? A dog sitting community page.
Yeah.
And we found loads on there, didn't we?
Yeah. We found like the family that looked after Archie and Tom
they
Price.
were absolutely lovely.
Yeah, because I think we ended up having them look after him for maybe 5 days.
Yeah, 5 days, and then we recommended them to some of our mates, and they had 2 dogs sat there for a few days as well. So yeah, they did well out of us.
They really did. They really did. So yes, I think generally speaking, when we found places on Google, though, it's been more businesses versus, or it might still be individuals, or it could be like a farm that will look after your dog and things like that. So we have used all of the above. And
I think there's one more step, which is probably after you've done all those steps, you can just do the general. Well, there's a couple of steps. If you're traveling with anyone, we've done a lot of dog sitting swaps as well. So we've had quite a few friends that we've just bumped into.
Not
randomly.
existing friends, friends that have become friends through travelling.
And they have dogs as well. And we've sat their dogs and they've sat ours. So doing a bit of a doggy sitting swap. We've done that a few times. That's a really great.
That's free.
Yeah, it's free because you're both benefiting out of that.
Yeah.
And then I suppose the last option in the barrel, which we've only ever done once and we failed, but ask people at the caravan park you don't know. So Hannah mentioned Bungle Bungles earlier. we ran out of options completely for Hannah and I both going into Bungle Bungles.
Yeah,
So,
we even posted on Wikicamps a request on the Wikicamps reviews for the place.
exactly.
But
That's
no
also
luck.
an option posted on Wikicamps. Then we went to the bar in the evening where people were kind of mingling, and we were literally going around and asking anyone at the caravan site
Yeah.
if they could sit Archie for $50. And we found no one. No one could do it. So unfortunately, when that happens, and you can't find a dog sitter, I mean, we still don't let that stop us going to explore the national parks. If that happens, either myself or Hannah will go in, have a feel for it, get some footage, do a bit of exploring.
Or we'll tag team. So
Yeah.
if that had been that was a national park Chris really wanted to go to. It was a national park where I was like, I hadn't actually heard of it before. So I was like, actually I'm good giving that a miss. Had it been a national park that I really wanted to go to as well, Chris would have gone one day. Would have then probably just extended a day, and I'd have gone the next day.
Which isn't ideal, and it adds time onto your trip. But it's not the end of the world. And in fact, we often like just going out for a walk and doing a national park on our own, because we can just take our time a bit more, do the walks that we want to do. And
Chris goes at a much faster pace than me.
That's true.
So sometimes it can actually be a little bit frustrating for both of us when we're doing a walk together.
But Bungle Bungles was a clear example. We had no options. So Hannah stayed at the caravan park, and I drove in and spent the day there, and absolutely loved it. But
I think there's something about going to a national park on your own as well.
Yeah.
There's just being so solitary, and when there's nobody else around, just really kind of being present in that moment and just absorbing your surroundings.
And especially a place like Bungle Bungles, which is just, unbelievably magnificent. It was, I absolutely loved doing that on my own. And, as much as I love Hannah doing walks together as well, it's also nice to do it separately. So I think we've never, not once on the trip, except for that time have we had an issue finding a pet sitter. They're always around. There's plenty around. You've just got to, you can't just wait for it to happen. You've got to really plan a week or so in advance. There's times we've done the day before even, but...
Yeah, there's been a couple of places that we've had to ring round to a few people until we've found a solution.
Yeah, it just requires planning, that's it. You just got to be ready to think about where you're going in the next week, especially if it's a national park, and plan accordingly.
Yeah.
But
I don't think our approach for where Chris was talking about asking around other people at the caravan park, I think generally that is still a good solution.
Yeah.
The problem with the Bungle Bungles caravan park is people only, it's very hot, dusty, dirty. That caravan park is literally where people stay to do the Bungle Bungles, and then they leave straight away.
Yeah.
So the problem with that particular caravan park is nobody just hangs around there for a day. So there wasn't anybody to dog sit. Whereas a lot of caravan parks, there are people just sort of moseying around, having a relaxing day. And so I think that it is still a viable option.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we've given you quite a few steps there to go through, and I think most of the time we need a sitter. We've found it either through Mad Paws, contacting the caravan park, or contacting the visitors centre. It's very rare that we've not found a dog sitter after at least doing those steps. So I would definitely take those steps, and I might put them up on the screen here somewhere so you can just see the steps that we took, and it gives you a good guide on how to find a pet sitter when you're in remote areas.
Yeah, I suppose one thing to say is if you are really concerned, so we've only generally booked sort of a week or so in advance, because we've tried to keep our trip really flexible the whole way around, because we have made lots of changes versus our original plan. So if you are really concerned, there is absolutely nothing wrong with booking, planning it even further ahead.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not doing a full 12 months, maybe it's just a sort of a 3-month trip. There's nothing wrong with you calling up pre-trip and calling up at all of the spots where you're planning and staying. Call up caravan parks and visitor centres. There's nothing, to stop you getting dog sitters locked in for the next 3 months and actually finding out what your solutions are with plenty of time.
Yeah, because sometimes, like, we've been, school holidays was obviously more difficult finding pet sitters because some of them were just full. They couldn't accept any more dogs. So, on occasion that happens, and we just rearrange our trip so we can still do what we need to and do the dog sitting on another day. Or, we've changed plenty of dog sitting days at late notice because the rain's been pouring down and it's been a terrible day, or, the roads are closed or something. So, it's never been a real issue. Before we started, it was probably my biggest worry as well, finding pet sitters in the national parks. But I'm actually surprised, especially taking those steps that we showed you before, how not easy, but it's manageable anywhere you go.
Yeah, and I think it's just becoming easier and easier. So as pet ownership increases, I mean, we saw a big increase during COVID of pet ownership, and as that industry becomes bigger and bigger, because we know a lot of people are prepared to spend as much money on the pets as they are on the kids. So
and, if you're one of those people that are staying at a caravan park for a couple of weeks, then maybe you want to do some pet sitting as well. Charge $30 a day. There's always people looking for pet sitters.
Yeah, we have seen that a couple of times where it's been somebody staying at the caravan park and they've just had some little business cards with their mobile phone numbers that they've said to reception, can we just put these here while we're staying?
Yeah, we'll be here for a couple of weeks if there's anyone that wants to do pet sitting. Anyone wants their pet sat.
It's a great opportunity for a little bit of income. In fact,
you did it.
I earned $50 in the Bungles, not intentionally, but somebody on WikiCamps saw that we couldn't find a dog sitter, and so asked if I'd dog sit their dog.
It's ironic that we were looking for a dog sitter, couldn't find one, so ended up sitting someone else's dog.
So Archie got to meet Chester, a lovely boxer.
So that's also a possibility to get a little bit of cash on the side as well. So I mean, there's always ways to do it, and I know we've gone pretty in depth here, but we get asked so many questions about it, and which is fair enough, but it's easily manageable if you just use some common sense and make sure that you're planned out, either way in advance if you want to, but at least I'd say a week in advance.
One last thing to touch on is around just getting to know the area and how dog friendly it is. So I think we've sort of covered all of the dog sitting stuff, but you want your dog to be enjoying itself when you're with it too. And so generally we'll also Google or look on WikiCamps to if there are any off-leash dog parks. Local council areas usually tell you which are which are the off-leash dog beaches. Archie loves to go for a swim in the beach.
Or we find a good little agility park. There's been a few of those around, which is really more than I expected, strangely enough. Because you don't want, we keep going back to the Bungles, but there was nothing fun there for poor little Archie to do. So, we made sure at our next stop that we had a beach to go to or had a really nice park that he could run around and play. So, keep your dog in mind and just make sure they're happy on your lap as much as you are. Yeah,
exactly. It's still really important to stimulate them and exercise them so that they're having a good time too. And they're less likely to cause you trouble if you're exercising them and tiring them out, versus if they're bored, that's when they start to become a little bit naughty. So I think that's something to bear in mind as well, that this lap isn't just for you. It is, but it is important to devote a bit of time to making sure your furry friend's enjoying the trip as well.
Yeah, and some of our best times are spending with Archie, down at the beach. He just absolutely loves it, which I'm sure you've seen before. Those are some of our favourite moments on the trip, just taking Archie somewhere where he absolutely loves.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's pretty much covered it.
Yeah, I think if you've got any further questions, please don't hesitate to ask us, because odds are we've either thought about it or kind of gone through it before now. But this is effectively a part 2 of the traveling with your dog, a bit more in depth on the pet sitting side. But don't forget to check out our first episode where we really talk about preparing for a lap of Australia with your dog and what you need to do and what you need to ask your vet, and bits and pieces that you should take with you on the lap of Australia with your dog.
Yeah, we've had quite a few questions about the dog hammock and where we get the dog hammock from.
Yeah, we might put a link in the description below as well, because the dog hammock in the car has been a lifesaver, and the car will be thanking me for years to come.
Absolutely. I think we're about due for our second dog hammock. It's pretty well worn.
When we get back, we'll be buying another one because we loved it so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, thanks for joining us, guys. We really hope you found this video informative and it's answered a lot of your questions. And again, take that step-by-step process when you're looking for a pet sitter, and you'll almost never be let down. And hopefully you'll find a pet sitter everywhere you go. So please subscribe, give us a like, and leave a comment below. If you've got any questions, send them in as well.
And happy travels for those of you setting off with a dog.
Yeah, have fun, guys.